And now it's time for our gun truth of the week.
Gun truth of the week. Okay, this week's gun truth is pretty interesting. I like it, especially considering some of the things that we're talking about when it comes to sensitive areas and the vampire rule that's coming up. We should, it's kind of appropriate that we're talking about the vampire rule
It's
in October. There
That's
you go.
true.
A recent survey study of U.S. adults with firearm access found that about 91.7% of respondents had never used a gun in their lifetime defensively. That's a lot. Now, that means a lot of things. It doesn't mean that 91% of Americans haven't. It just means that 91% of the respondents haven't. This, was, by the way, was the Journal of American Medicine, JAMA. In that same study, the most common form of defensive gun use was showing a firearm to a perceived threat. So they just showed it. They said, hey, I got a gun. That was the defensive gun use. Most common form of defensive gun use, or DGU, in a recent survey of U.S. adults with firearm access showing a firearm to a perceived threat was the single most reported type of defensive gun use. So they didn't even have to pull the trigger.
Here's the thing. And I think that this just lends to the lack of truth in lending here, right?
Yeah.
So 91.7% of respondents had never used a gun in their lifetime defensively.
Right.
I don't know about you, but when I read that in that same study, the most common form of defensive gun use was showing of a firearm, I consider that use of a gun defensively.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, no, I don't think they were disputing that.
Right,
they were just saying that only about 8% of their respondents had done any kind of DGU. And the most common type of DGU was just basically saying, I got a gun, or showing I got a gun.
All right.
Rare on an annual basis, well, 4.7% reported ever having shown a firearm. Less than 1% of respondents reported any form of DGU in the past year. Usually no shots fired. Among respondents, actually firing at a perceived threat was a very uncommon thing, showing the firearm predominated. So in other words, first off, depending on the survey, we've talked about this a lot, between 500,000 times a year and 3 million times per year, somebody in America uses a firearm defensively, as a DGU, a defensive gun use. Most often, by far, it's just the fact that they have a gun. They don't have to actually pull the trigger. They don't even have to point it. They just have to basically say, "Hey, I got a gun," and show that they have a gun, and the defense is over. The person who was going to attack him or her has changed their mind and decided they're doing some bad things in life. If all the decisions they've made up till now led them to, faced with somebody with a gun, they're going to rethink what they're doing, and they're cheesing it. They're out of there. So it really, what it is that the fact that a firearm is the most effective self-defense tool ever invented, ever created, ever owned by man, cuts through all the political BS.
I think one thing that's important to point out is a defensive display is essentially what they're describing here.
Yeah.
Is not legal everywhere, so I think it's important to put that out there. California doesn't allow us to defensively display.
Okay, yeah,
You're right. Outside of the home.
Yeah, and there's a whole segment of a class that you'd have to teach on exactly like you can't just what brandishing is, what brandishing isn't, when you can, when you can't.
Correct.
But if your life is in danger and you pull a gun out, and someone that's always legal. But 50 states, my life's in danger.
Right.
I'm pulling a gun out.
Right.
So I think in a lot of those cases, the person sees that gun's coming out, they're out of there.
They change their mind.
They're out of there.
They change their mind quick.
Yeah, but using, brandishing, to threat is not necessarily,
Correct.
Anyway, it's an amazing thing. I think that it's a very positive thing for firearms ownership. What we say all the time is get a gun, get training, get a permit, and carry everywhere you can. This survey, by the way, done by JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association. It's a bunch of doctors, not exactly a gun-friendly environment.
Right.
JAMA is notoriously anti-Second Amendment. So for them to come out and admit this, you can't run from numbers, and you can't really you can't go against true science. So perfect. Anyway, there you go. And that is your gun truth of the week. Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.